Welcome to the Stone Table. This isn't a stage, it's a gathering place. Here, lifters of all kinds bring their stories. The heavy, the honest, and the hard-earned. Real voices, real weight. Shared like a good pour among friends. Recorded in Ontario, Canada, and open to lifters everywhere. Sláinte.
Welcome back to the Stone Table podcast. I'm your host, Rebecca Innes. For most of human history, strength wasn't measured in gyms. It wasn't tracked on apps or spreadsheets. Strength was tested in fields, on riverbanks, in farms, in small villages, where a stone sat waiting to see who could move it, who could lift it, who could throw it. Some of those stones are still there today. And every year, people travel from all over the world to try to lift them. And one of the most famous is the Inver stone. And I've been researching the Inver stone lately and looking at who has lifted it overhead, and the unique history behind it. And I came across today's guest scrolling through Instagram posts amongst many who have lifted the Inver stone. And his story really caught me because when I looked at him lifting the Inver stone, he was in his Rogue t-shirt. And he had said that this was a dream in the making for about 20 years. And that really intrigued me. And he's a quiet person on Instagram. And what compelled me to reach out was that just for that very reason is to add his story to the archive and understand why this dream had been waiting for 20 years to happen. Not only has he lifted many historic stones in Scotland, but he's also done a lot of other things. And I had absolutely no idea who I was reaching out to when I did. He is the founder of one of the earliest CrossFit gyms, one of the top 8, I believe, 2004. Rainer CrossFit. If you're in CrossFit, you know it. It's in Washington. He's been part of the strength world for decades in grip sport. I believe he's also done a bit of chainsaw sport as well. And as I said, historic stone lifting. So today we're talking about all of those things and why ancient tests like the Inver call to people today. So Kurtis, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah. As I start out with every guest, I just ask what we're drinking. It's 12 o'clock here, 9 o'clock your time.
I am drinking coffee.
Same. I've just finished a massive leg day. And I just downed a bagel before we started this, and very, very keen to have this chat with you. But as I said, when I was researching this episode, couldn't find a lot on your Instagram, but I did find a lot in other sources on the interwebs. So for those that don't know who you are, could you just give a little brief rundown of who Kurtis Bowler is?
Yeah. So, I guess starting out with the most important stuff, other husband, been married. Tomorrow is actually our 28th wedding anniversary.
Oh,
So father and husband. And then we started Rainier CrossFit back in July of 2004. So it's evolved a lot over the years. At our biggest, we were in a 9,000 square foot facility and had, 200 members. And now we're in our 700 square foot garage with 3 members, my wife, my son, and I. But we're still an affiliate, and that actually we're oldest affiliate now in the world. The other ones ahead of us have dropped off over the years. So been on seminar staff for CrossFit since 2005. So one of the longest, how would you say that? Most tenured people, I guess, on seminar staff. Been around a long time there, teaching level 1, level 2 seminars. I'm one of the L4 evaluators. And then have worn a handful of hats at the CrossFit games. We ran the regional competitions back when we had regional competitions. My wife and I ran those events for the Northwest region for several years. Ran the Masters competition at the CrossFit games for a couple of years. And then my last few years at the games, I did athlete control. So making sure that all the athletes got to where they were supposed to go on time and in the right uniforms. The last few years, I've helped out with the Rogue Invitational. So Bill and Katie asked me, I think it was 5 years ago now, if I wanted to help out with the strongman portion of their event. And to me, it was like coming full circle, because strongman was like how I got into strength training,
Mhm.
and then evolved into doing more CrossFit than that. And then to be asked to help out with such a high level event like that, it was an incredible honor. And so I've been really happy to be able to help them out the last few years. Yeah, did some grip strength stuff. Got certified on the Captain of Crush #3 back in, I think it was 2001, right around there. So yeah, that's pretty much me.
Yeah, and I mean, when we were doing the exchanges back and forth, you briefly said some of this stuff to me, but you're a super humble guy, and I think you know when you got into the CrossFit in 2004, it was still pretty underground at that point. Can you?
Very
And
much.
I also noticed through your Instagram that you were strongly involved in strong organization of strongman competitions. What came first, the CrossFit in 2004 or the strongman odd implement type thing before that?
I started doing the first ever, I would say first ever serious workouts that I did. I started doing super squats, Randy Strawson's book, Super
Yes.
Squats, where he does
Yes.
20 rep squats. That was the first thing that I ever did. And loved doing that. Got, got up to some decent, I thought at the time, weight anyway. And then in doing that, reading the old Milo articles and, looking at more Randy stuff, I just started to get into a little bit more of the odd object things. And I was lucky, my dad's a logger, and so has access to some of that stuff. So like he had access to a big tire. He's like, hey, those big tires they flip, we've got one at the shop that's got a hole in it, do you want it? And I said yes. And so he brought it over to the house and dropped it off. And then couple months later, he said, hey, that big chain that they drag on World's Strongest Man? I said, yeah. He goes, I got 6 feet of it in the back of the truck. I'll be to your house in 10 minutes. And so it kind of evolved into, I started doing a little bit more of that type of training. And that was probably in 99, like 1999, maybe 1998. I started doing that stuff. And then of course seeing all the old World's Strongest Man competitions and the stone lifting, the Atlas stones and that sort of thing, I decided I wanted to make my own Atlas stone. And so back then there weren't people selling molds or anything like that. And so I found a video online of a guy that like covered the old Foursquare, the rubber Foursquare balls,
Yes. Yeah.
covered one of those in plaster of Paris, and then popped the ball and then filled the plaster of Paris with concrete and made an Atlas stone. And so um, I made my first one, and it was way too big because the ball that I had, I was judging like how big it was in my arms and versus like the World's Strongest Man, and I was like, this is ridiculous. I ended up running out of concrete and had to go and buy more. And it still sits. We've moved it from the house that we lived in then. We moved it with us, and it sits out in front of our house now. It's kind of a reminder of me, my idiot days. But it
How much does that weigh? Yeah.
weighed 420 pounds. That was
Oh my
my first
God.
Atlas stone.
Oh
Yeah.
my God. That's great.
Um, so made another one out of a smaller ball. And it's funny, that one actually ended up being, without trying, um, as I blew the ball up to get it big enough and stiff enough to hold the plaster of Paris, the ends ended up widening out, and it weighs 290 pounds, so it's a little bit heavier than the Inver
I
stone.
was going to say the Inver stone.
Almost, yeah, it's almost the exact same shape as the Inver stone.
Wow.
So I was like, that turned out kind of cool. Um, and so that was my first Atlas stone that I got to play around with. And then flash forward a few years, during all this time, I was a police officer. And the strength definitely helped out for that. I mean, it helped not just like arrest and control, but also just, I always joked that kept my hair short or shaved because it made me look meaner and people were less likely to fight with me. And so I would way rather not have to fight than to fight. But I figured if if I was stronger, it would help me fight people, but it would also help me not have to fight people because I
Hmm.
looked like I could fight. And so, so it helped out a lot with that. But what it didn't do was help out with foot pursuits. And I had a guy run from me that we were trying to arrest. And I sounded like a 10-year-old girl when I got on the radio because I was so out of breath chasing after this guy. And my boss pulled me aside after I got done, and we ended up catching the guy. But she said, "You sounded like a weightlifter that was trying to run," and I was thinking that's exactly what I
Yeah.
was. And
Yeah.
so I looked around after that, and that was when I found CrossFit. And so I started gearing my workouts more that way. And then in September of 2003, the founder of CrossFit came up to the first affiliate here in Seattle and did a little 1 day mini seminar. And I went to that, and I actually took my homemade Atlas stone and my tire up to that seminar with me. And, and that was the first time they had seen anything like that and thought that it was great. And, the tires were pretty easy to get back then. It still are, you can go to a lot of places and get a used tire. The Atlas stone, not so much, but they started integrating that. They had a post about it on the main site a couple days after that saying, you guys need to get these tires. And now there's you can't shake a stick and not find a CrossFit gym that has a tire in it nowadays. Uh, and so, yeah, that took me to CrossFit. And then I always integrated the strongman type implements and stones into what I was doing with CrossFit. And we did that for really almost everyone at the gym. There was very few people who didn't at least touch the Atlas stones because at one time, we had 53, I think, Atlas stones at the
Wow.
gym from, we had them from 34 pounds all the way up to 334 pounds. Um, and so we would integrate those into our workouts either on heavy days where we would, if it was a clean that we were thinking about doing that day, we would do Atlas stone loads. We had a couple of platforms that we would put the stones on. We would do stone to shoulders in workout. We would do carries, hold them on your chest and carry them. So yeah, we did integrated that stuff into a lot of it. We always had thick handled bars, so we put axles into workouts a lot. Um, we had a couple of logs. I was a welder in high school, so I made yokes. So we had six yokes at the gym, and we would use those for heavy days also. And so that putting all of that stuff together, um, we decided we had our son Casey was born in 2000, and in 2002, no, it was September 11th. I remember it was September 11th of 2001 while we were watching the World Trade Center come down.
Hmm.
We had a lady that was coming to the house to help us with communication with them and just figuring out behaviors and stuff like that. Because we at that point we knew there was something going on, but didn't know what it was. And she came by and told us that she thought that he had autism or something on the autism spectrum. And so at that point, we were like, all right, now what do we do? And so we had a few years to kind of deal with that and figure out what was going on, and had him tested and figured out that he had Fragile X, which is very similar to autism. It's on the spectrum, most inherited cause of autism or mental impairment. And we thought it's the most common one, but nobody really knew about it. And so we thought, let's do a strongman competition and have it be for Fragile X research. And so we found a place in Boston called Fraxa. It's outside of Boston, but it's in Massachusetts, called Fraxa, the Fragile X Research Foundation, and they're great. It was started by parents of children that have Fragile X, and so we came up with a strongman competition. We had a friend that owned one of the guys at the gym owned a furniture store that had a big parking lot, and we asked him if we could use it to host our strongman competition. He said, "Yeah, that'd be great. I might even be able to sell some furniture that way." And so we partnered with him for a lot of years and ran this strongman competition. It was pretty rare back then. It was drug tested, which not a lot of events were back then. I don't think a lot of them are now either, but that was important to us. And yeah, so that was
Wow.
kind of the evolution of how CrossFit turned into strongman, and then the strongman competition ended up the last couple of years that we did it. We made the strongman events a little bit because most of the people that came were CrossFitters anyway. Like the
Mhm.
people that came the first year that we did it were just people from our gym. And then I think we had one guy from outside of the gym that was a director at a local YMCA or something like that. And then as it gradually progressed, I switched it a little bit and we started making the events like how we would do workouts in the gym, where it would be we did one of them was a short run, like a 200-meter run, 5 Atlas stone loads, and 1 rope climb. And we did that 3 rounds for time as one of our events. We did, deadlift for reps. We had some pretty cool implements that we built over the years. I got a couple of big, my dad, like I said, my dad's a logger. And so he was able to get me a couple of really big trees. And they were probably, I think they were 10 or 12 feet long, and we made a uh, pivot point for them that we could move around. And so the further back on the log it was, the heavier it was out front,
Yeah.
and made like a car deadlift apparatus out of
Yes.
it.
Yeah.
Um, and at one point we had it where you had to load sandbags on the front of so you had to run out, grab a sandbag, run back, load it on, do a deadlift, run back out, grab a sandbag, come back, load it on, do a deadlift. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. We broke the $100,000 mark the last year that we did it, for raising money for research. So um, it was good times.
Yeah. And we'll talk a bit about maybe how maybe strength sport has helped with autism in your son, but we'll get to that in a little bit. But as I mentioned to you in our pre conversation, my gateway to natural stones was the Atlas stone. And my first exposure to Atlas stone was through CrossFit. And I traveled down, I think it was to Toronto. Rob Orlando was giving a seminar on the strongman cert for CrossFit. I had already got my coach certification. And so I wanted to do the strongman. And then discovered Atlas stones, and that was absolutely it for me. I started making them. I started like the same. I went out, I got a tire, I would go up and down the road or our front drive with it. People thought I was training for the amazing race. But it was, and I think that this is often from the folks in the stone community that I've been speaking to over the years. It seems to be a lot of people have started in the CrossFit. And I think I think what I wanted to maybe highlight here is um, getting those implements, the strongman implements was pretty easy for me because I could make the Atlas stone. I could go out and get the tire. I haven't actually had anybody on an episode yet talk about the making of Atlas stones and just how easy they are to add to your uh, equipment arsenal if you don't want to get a Slater stone or that. And I think I had hybrid molds. Did you make all of your stones?
Yeah, a lot of them. I had I had the Slater's Hardware molds, and except for the first one that I talked about with the swimming pool and the plaster of Paris. But
Yes.
after that, I found Slater's Hardware, and so I bought a bunch of his molds. I had at one point, I had almost every size mold that he made. Um, and so I made a lot of them. I had 4 um, granite ones that I bought for the strongman competition. That what I managed to get a local company um, that was they were like a yard. What's the term I'm looking for? Um, like they help people design yards to make them look like flashy. And so they had all of these different stone things around. And I called them up. I was like, "Do you guys have any spheres that are made out of granite?" And they said, "Yeah, we've got some." And I asked them if they wanted to sponsor the competition and if they would sell them to me at a reduced rate, and we'd give them an ad and whatnot. And so they ended up selling them to us for half price. And we got these giant. I went up and picked them up one day after work, and the 2 little ones are 205 pounds, and the big ones are 334 pounds. And we always called the 334-pound ones. We called them Trace Quattro, because the guy that loaded them into my truck was a Hispanic guy who did not speak English very well. But the boss said, "Hey, we want to get these things weighed. This guy wants to know how much they weigh." And so he set them on the scale, and I couldn't see what the scale said. And he goes, "Trace Quattro." And I was like, "I got that. I know how much that weighs." So yeah, so I've got 2 or 4 that are granite, but the rest of them are all ones that I made. Or we would have a stone making party, and a bunch of people would show up, and we would just we'd put a bunch of them together, mix a bunch of concrete, and then pour them in there.
Okay, so this was totally not on the bingo card for this episode, but I would like to stop here and talk to folks about how they can make the Atlas stones, because I think myself, and my husband doesn't lift. I'm the only lifter. I have about 30 Atlas stones myself.
Yeah.
And most of them are made by myself. I did at the end purchase some from a guy that also runs a CrossFit gym. But can we just talk to folks and briefly run a small tutorial on
Yeah.
stone making? That would be great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to talk with molds or
Yes. Well,
plaster
actually,
Paris?
okay, let's do the molds first because I feel
Okay.
that would be easier. I didn't do the
Yeah.
plaster Paris, but let's
Okay.
do the molds first.
So molds are really easy, really. You just need something to put them in. So I usually used a little tire some tires that we had found over the years, and I would set the mold comes in. It's a giant globe, a lot like that ball sitting behind me, um, and it's split in half, and one half has a ring going around it that will support the 2 of them together, so that the because it's the material is only about that slick, so that it doesn't slide off of itself. So there's another ring going around that, and then there's a hole in the top, and so you just spray the inside of the thing with silicone spray, put the 2 halves together, and then I usually would flip it upside down so the opening was on the bottom, and then I would put duct tape over it and all around it to make sure that it was held together tightly. And then I would put another couple of strips around where that seam came together to keep anything from coming out of the seams.
Mhm.
And like you don't need a ton of duct tape, but I tend to over engineer things. So I would put 8 or 10 strips going crosswise on it to hold it together, and then I'd wrap 3 or 4 loops around it to make sure that nothing leaked out of the middle. And then I just turned it back right side up, so that the opening was on top. Put it in the ball, or put it in the tire rather, and then I would start mixing the concrete up. And I usually did it. They sell these pretty cool bags now it's a mixing bag that you can dump the concrete into and then dump your water in, and then you just grab one end of the bag and kind of mix it around and mash it up. Those work good. I always used, I bought a cement mixing tub from
Mhm.
Home Depot, and I used a trowel and or a garden hoe and mixed it up in there, and then I would just scoop it out with a red Solo cup, scoop it out and dump it into the thing because after you mix the concrete, it's a little bit too heavy to
Yes.
pick up. Whatever you have it in is probably going to break if you try and pick it up. So I just used a Solo cup and I'd put it in there and I'd get it filled up about halfway, and then I'd use a stick to mix it around to make sure that I got the bubbles out. I never used a vibrator on it. Some people
Okay.
will use a vibrator to get the bubbles out of it. I never did that. I just used a stick because I kind of liked the outside of it to not be super smooth. I wanted those little air pockets in it so that it would have some texture to it. Because I was never a big fan of tacky on the stones, and so I liked having that extra texture on it. And I get it all the way filled up to the top, use the stick again, get the bubbles out, and then get it, leveled out on top. And then all you've got to do is let it sit for uh I I tried to always go 7 days. Every once in a while I would pull it out sooner than that, but Slater always recommended 7 days. So I kept it in there for 7 days. Sometimes I would cover them up with tarp or something like that because it's supposedly the longer they stay wet, the
Hmm.
stronger that they will be eventually. So, but you don't have to do the tarp thing. You can just let them sit in the mold, and then it's just walk away and let them sit. And then once they're ready to go, take all the duct tape off. Slater's molds always had a little wooden stick that came with it that you could use to smack I had a rubber mallet that I would use to pop
Hmm.
around the top of it to get it to break loose a little bit. And then I would use that wooden stick and the rubber mallet and smack the bottom half of the stone mold off. And you want to be gentle with it because you can break that plastic off of there if you just start beating on it.
Yes.
But just start tapping on it, and you'll gradually start to see a little air pocket under the edge of it. And then you just tap around, and you'll start to see it, and you'll hear it to start to let go. And then you just peel that off, peel the other half off. And then I'd usually let it sit again for a couple more days before I used it to make sure that it was completely dry.
Did
And
you do like we sprayed silicone on the inside of our molds? Did you do that or no?
yep,
Yeah.
yeah, I'd
Yeah.
spray the inside with silicone before I taped it together.
Yeah. And then when like so yeah, I took the mallet instead of the stick to and it kept like pounding on the side. But again, you like we didn't get all of the air pockets out.
Yeah,
And then I think when I took it off, I ended up watering them for like 20
yeah.
days or something like that with a hose. I don't know. Is
You
that right?
you can do that. Yeah, you can do that too. That's like putting the tarp over them and
Yeah.
letting them, keeping them wet a little bit longer. You can do that to help them get a little bit stronger too.
And so, yeah, like I don't think none of mine have broken, and I've had them since. So I started CrossFit when I was in what 2009, I think, and I've have the same first one that I made.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're pretty sturdy as long as you mix up that concrete. It's very easy and relatively inexpensive.
Yeah.
Uh, but as I've been sitting here, I've been thinking of the plaster ones because I mean, you made your Inver stone well out of a ball, but like talk
Mhm.
to us about the plaster ones because you could get unique shapes with that.
Yeah, the plaster one, so I had a swimming pool. And the plaster ones are, I mean, it's not super expensive, but the plaster is almost as expensive as a mold.
Hmm.
Back when I was buying it, it's been years since I've sourced plaster, but I bought a couple 30-pound bags of it, and I want to say it was like $60 for the plaster. Um, but I got a Mikasa play ball. It was like a 4 square ball. Went to a sporting goods store and bought that. And they have the diameter of them on the outside of the packaging. So I was like, all right, that's about how big I wanted to use for it. And then brought it home and mixed up the plaster of Paris in a little kids swimming pool, like the little plastic swimming pools that you can get at
Hmm.
Walmart. Mix it up in there, and then I put the ball in it And I didn't want to, I was planning on making more than one stone that way. So I didn't want to. The video that I saw, the guy popped the ball and then pulled the ball out. And I thought, that's kind of silly to waste the ball. Why not just get the hole at the
Yeah.
top and do it that way? And so I put the hole down on the bottom of the pool and then started covering the thing up with plaster. And it worked out really well in that the weight of the plaster smashed the ball down a little bit, like I said, and it flared out the ends of it. So it made it that Inver stone. But then once everything dried, and I had a good, it was probably an inch and a half, 2 inch thick layer of plaster all around this ball. And once it dried out and cured, I broke the edges around where I wanted to flip it back over, flipped it back over and put it in a tire. And the weight of the plaster had taken it down to where I didn't have to like figure out where I was going to get to the ball. There was actually part of the ball was exposed. And since I had put the pinhole right there, I was able to just stick the inflator thing back in it, deflate the ball and pull it out that way. So I didn't have to waste the ball. And then I had my hole right on top and just filled the concrete in exactly the way I did before. I didn't use a releasing agent on that.
Oh, okay.
I think it would be better to do it that way because the concrete, there was some plaster on the outside of the stone when I first pulled it out, but overusing it and I took a wire brush to it and that, but it did wear off eventually. But I think it would have been easier to get all the plaster off of it had I put some silicone or something in there beforehand. But
And okay, there's one question I did have for you though. So when you use the molds, one problem I had, and I just have one beside me. I'll just show you. This one's a really bad example. Um, this is like one of my first. Okay, so as you
yeah,
can see, my concrete was horrible. But the this here, the where the concrete comes, like I know we ended up sanding them down. But is
hmm
there do you have any advice for how it doesn't have to be so like how did you get it not to be so protruding like that? Or did you just sand yours down too?
I actually just left them like that because it made a nice spot for it when we were setting them up for like a stone run. It
Yeah,
made a nice flat spot so that we didn't have to chase the stones all over the place. So I
true.
just left it on there. I would try to not fill it. The the way to avoid that would be to just not fill it all the way to the top, and then you wouldn't have that rim around it.
Okay. Yeah, I think this one was was a
Yeah,
horrible first example, but I can't get rid of it. I ended up using it
that,
as a garden decoration and I had to pull it back in.
that's well. Here, let's see if we'll test out my theory about how good our Wi-Fi is here in
Okay.
Washington. I'll take you out and show you that first one that
Okay,
I
perfect. Oh,
I
did you
made.
ever lift it?
No,
Okay.
no, that's
Cuz
yeah,
that would be insane.
yeah. 420 is a bit was a
World's
bit
strongest
beyond my
man.
capabilities. Yeah.
Yeah, we could not do what you're doing at where I live in Canada, for
Yeah.
sure. Our Wi-Fi would not.
So that's the
Wow.
first one.
Yeah.
And so you can see it's got the oop, there we go. It's got that same thing happening around the
Yes.
top of it. But little kids will go by the front of our house and we've seen them stop a handful of times and they'll like climb around on it or they'll just look at it. And we came out once and the parents told us that they thought they were the rock things from Frozen and they were waiting for it to turn into a person and walk away. So I was like, that's kind of cute.
It is so cute. Oh, well, thank you for that. This is the first field trip I've had on a podcast. Thank you for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Uh, okay, so very cool. And then, did you ever? I don't know where to go next because I kind of want to go into the grip world. So because it's strongly implicates where we're going with stone lifting. But where did natural stones come in all of this? Was it before grip or simultaneously? Like, when did that happen?
Kind of simultaneously.
Okay.
The natural stones were actually, we had the first house that my wife and I bought had from the front of we lived in a cul-de-sac. From the cul-de-sac to the bottom of our yard was a 19-foot elevation difference. And we wanted a house. We bought this house with a big yard so the kids could play in it, but it was so steep that there really wasn't any place to do anything. And so we're like, well, we need to build a couple of rock walls to level out our property. And so we made a rock wall off to the side of the house and leveled off that part of our property. And then we built another rock wall that was probably 5.5 or 6 feet tall at its tallest point, a little bit lower down. And so we had 3 tiers in our yard that were level. So the kids had different areas that they could play in. And those rock walls were my intro into lifting natural stones, because I built them myself by hand. And the first one that we built, because it was probably 3 feet high. I had an 83 Chevy truck, and I drove over to a town next to us that had rock for sale, and the rock was a penny a pound.
Huh.
And so they would let me go in there. It was the craziest thing. It's a rock quarry. There's the big machines all over the place. And they're like, no, you can go to that pile and just pick out rocks. And so I just went to the pile and started picking out rocks that I thought would be like fit together well, and started throwing them in the back of the pickup, and ended up with, I want to say it was 3 pickup loads that were 2,000 pounds each, which is way too much to throw in the back of a 83 3/4 ton truck.
Yeah.
It looked like
My
this on the
husband
way
would
home. I
kill
could
me.
barely steer it because the front tires were kind of coming off the ground. But the lady, I got the first load and went home, dumped them out, built that part of the wall. A couple of days later, I went back to get another load. And as I was pulling out, the lady goes, man, the guys were talking about you on the radio the second you got here. And I said, what do you mean? And they said, that guy that picks up the 2-man rocks by himself is back to get another load. And because they told me, like, this is the 1.5 to 2-man. And that was how they sized the rocks. Was a 1-man rock was a rock that one person could pick up. A 2-man rock was 2 people should pick it up. And I was picking up the 2-person rocks by myself and throwing them in the back of my truck. And so then we built that wall, and I was just like, golly, all the other workout stuff that I had done just did not compare to what I got out of. I felt so strong after I got done building those rock walls.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I would start looking for some natural stones to lift, and I would just randomly, or people would bring them to the gym. I had a buddy, the first guy that I ever trained, brought a rock by that I think they dug it out of his yard, and he thought this would be a good one to lift, so I'll take it to Kurtis. And so he brought it over, and then I had a couple of other ones that we found over the years.
Did natural stones ever go into CrossFit? I don't think so, right?
No, it was mostly Atlas stones, because they're I think they're not easier to come by, because you can find regular rocks anywhere. You just have to. I think the hard part with the natural stones is, and it might have been on oh no, I was watching the Arnold yesterday, and they said it, that the natural stones it was yours. Natural stones are always heavier than you think they are.
Yes.
It was I was looking at your thing that said the different densities and whatnot, but it's always going to be heavier than you think it is. And that's always been the case. And I'll see one and I'll be like, I think I could pick that up. And then I'll go try and grab onto it and be like, maybe this is going to be way harder than I thought it was. And so, I don't know if you saw the
stone to shoulder yesterday in the Arnold's for the 240 with the women. Holy cow.
That was crazy.
That was that was CrossFit. Like
Yeah.
legit, like the amount of reps that they were doing, it turned from strength to CrossFit. Like Inez
Yeah.
was amazing, but who was the one that beat her by one?
Angelica
Yeah,
Jardine.
Angelica.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. The that was ridiculous, but
it was ridiculous.
I was getting this picture. This was oop, doggone it. We'll
I
do
do
another
love this interactive
this was
podcast.
a picture that my wife took while I was building the rock
Oh
wall.
wow,
So
that is gigantic.
yeah, it was those
How
ones we moved in with a little bobcat, and then I jockeyed them around and put them exactly how I wanted them by hand. But yeah, it was quite the undertaking for sure.
and was it? Did you do it like 3 deep, like 3 stone deep? There, it looks like it.
No, it was only one stone.
Oh,
It was just one stone deep, but the
they're just
bottom ones
big.
were, yeah, they were 2 or 3 person rocks. So they were really, um, really good sized. And that was the base. And then I got 2 person rocks and just kind of filled in from there. So
So, as I said, 2024, you were over in your Rogue t-shirt and lifting the Inver stone. I believe you did the Dinnie the same trip. You were with Jerry Pritt. Were you? Was it the same trip?
the Dinnie stones were 24 and the Inver stone was 25.
Okay. Uh,
Yeah.
and so you were for the Inver stone, you were there with Jerry Pritchard, I think. Was
That
he?
was the Dinnie stones. I was
The
there with
Dinnie was with
Jerry.
Jerry. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, okay, let's go chronologically then. We'll start with um the Dinnie, with
Okay.
the Dinnies. And how did you go from lifting stones in your backyard? Because you, in your post, you said for the Inverstone that it had been a 20-year dream. Was it the same for the Dinnies as well? Like, had this been something that you had aspired to, or?
The Dinnies were the Inverstone was always more that was the one that I wanted to lift.
Yeah.
The Dinnie stones, I started thinking about lifting those when I saw them at I think it might have been they were at the Arnold one year
Yes, they were.
earlier on, and I was like, that'd be kind of cool. And then Rogue made their um, the replicas, and
Yes.
those were at Rogue HQ. We taught a seminar there, and I tried to pick them up at Rogue HQ and was like, wow, those are way harder than I thought they were going to be. And, uh, and so that kind of spurred me to like, I'd like to be able to pick those things up because it's kind of my thing is picking up heavy stuff. And if I can't pick up something heavy, it makes me want to pick it up even more. And so that put the Dinnies on my radar. They had never really been a goal to me for I don't really know why. I just the Inverstone always I think because they had handles. I
Right.
think was the thing. Like the Inverstone was more the like classic, like nothing on it that makes it easier to pick up. It's just the Dinnie stones aren't easy to pick up by any stretch. Their weight is what makes them harder to pick up. But I think that's why the Inverstone appealed to me more. But the Dinnies, my wife bought me the Killer Strength Scotland Dinnie Stone trainers
Yeah.
one year. I want to say it was 2023 for Christmas. And I started training with them, and I've got pretty bad arthritis in my right hip. And every time I trained for them, it made my hip ache, and it would make my low back ache. And I was like, you know what, the weird position that puts me in, maybe the Dinnie stones just aren't in the cards for me.
Hmm.
So I just quit training for them. And then the first year that we were in Scotland, we were talking about trying to get to the Inverstone, and we just couldn't get to the Inverstone that year for whatever reason. That somebody had it, and it wasn't available to lift. And they said that Jerry was going out to the Dinnie Stones though, and Katie had said, "Hey, you should go out there." And I said, "I don't know. That's like it's the day I'm supposed to brief all of the guys and gals for the competition, and I'll be gone for a couple hours. And Katie was great. She was like, no, you don't understand. I'm telling you, you should go out there. And I was, okay, good. Okay, I'll go. And so I got with Jerry, and he said that they were leaving at like 9:30 to go out to the stones, or maybe it was 10. And I said, okay, cool. I'll see you tomorrow. Well, flashed forward to the next day, I went to the Rogues head media guy, because he was the one that had arranged everything. And I said, hey, where are those guys meeting at? And he said, oh, they left already. And I was like, what? And he goes, yeah, they left at 9:30, and they had ended up leaving before they said they were going to leave. And Jerry forgot to say anything to me about it. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm not going. And he's like, you should go. He said, get an Uber. Like, I don't know how much it's going to cost, but it'll be worth it. Like he said, there's no way they're going to be done by the time you get out there. Just go. And so I thought about it for a few minutes and was like, yeah, what the heck? I'm going to go. And so went to the hotel, said, hey, can I get a Uber to this address? And they're like, yeah, that's kind of the middle of nowhere, but sure, whatever. And so they got me an Uber. This dude shows up, and it was like a half an hour, 40-minute drive to get out there. And we get out there, and they were actually just getting ready to button things up. And so I was just this random guy that hopped out of an Uber and walked over, and I watched Jerry do a couple of his lifts. He was trying to do the
Side
timed
by
hold.
side. Oh, the timed
Yeah,
hold. Yeah.
the timed hold. And then he walked with him also. But he got done, and I was just this, like I said, this dude that got out of an Uber and was standing there kind of watching everything. And they were getting ready to chain him back up. And I walked up and I was like, hey, could I try and lift those things before you put them away? And they looked, and Jerry at that point recognized me, and he's like, oh, okay. Hey, Kurtis, how's it going? And Stevie Shanks was there, and he was like,
Yes. I think Martin was there too, right? Martin Jensen?
yeah. And he was like, okay, sure, you could try and lift them. And he's like, don't you want to warm up or anything first? And they had they had a ring with like 225 pounds on it. So I picked that up a couple of times, and they said, okay, you ready? And I said, sure. And asked, like, how you position them, and is there anything to it? And the guys helped me out a little bit. And, but I could still tell they were kind of like, who is this guy, and why is he trying to lift them? Because there's so much that goes into the lifting of them. You have to have an appointment and all of these things. And I was just some dude. And so I tried to pick him up once and got the big one off the ground, but the little one didn't quite come off the ground. And then they were like, oh crap, this guy can actually lift these things. And Jerry had asked if I wanted to wear his belt. He's like, do you want to wear a belt? And I said, is it acceptable to wear a belt? And they're all like, oh yeah, you can wear a belt. And so Jerry went over to get his belt. And one of the other guys, I never learned his name, but he's lifted the stones like 100 times or something like that. He was one of the guys in the kilt in the
Brett
video.
Nichols?
Could have been.
Yeah,
sounds
probably.
Right.
Yeah.
Sounds right. And he came up and he looked at me and he goes, you don't need an effing belt to lift those things. You can do it by yourself. And I was like, all right. And so Jerry came back over, and I said, nah, never mind, Jerry. I'm going to try it without the belt. And so then the second attempt, I got him, and it was amazing. And then as we were walking away, that guy put his arm around my shoulder, and he said, you're going to remember that you didn't need an effing belt to lift those things. And that was really cool. And so it was such a being in that spot, knowing that was the bridge that that Donnie Shanks walked the things across. And it was just like it was just so cool. It was such an amazing experience. And I was the 332nd person to lift them.
And you were 54, right?
What's that?
You were 54?
52. 52. Yeah. And Stevie said, that'll be an easy one to remember, because that's the same weight of the stones in kilos. And so then Stevie ended up helping at the event that year. He was one of the one of the equipment guys. And so he got back there a little bit before I did. And when I got back, we passed each other in the equipment area. He goes, "Hey, Mr. 332, how's it going?" And so it was such a cool experience. He gave me one of their patches for the Highland Games stuff that I still have. The keepers of the stones, just an amazing old couple. And
Mm-hmm.
the lady was like, no, we have to get your picture. And she said, hold this blank sheet of paper and we'll Photoshop in the certificate. And because they weren't ready for me. They had no preparation for it, but they were just, everybody was so great and so gracious to let me do it. And it was very cool for me because, like I said, I kind of figured those were just not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And to be able to lift them, and especially be able to lift them there and the actual ones. And it was cool. Dr. Crawford was there, and his son. And so, yeah, it was great.
So you were there in 2024 with Rogue, right?
Hmm.
And then
Yep.
back in 2025 for the in with Rogue for the invert.
Yep. For the invitational. And then
Yeah.
that day that year, they had we had a day where like things were there, but we couldn't quite start setting them up yet. They were building some different things. And Katie told us, she's like, "Hey, today's the day. If you guys want to go try and do the invert, this would be a good time to do it." And so the three of us, myself, Rob Lawson, and Drake Sladkey, all went out to the Inverstone and picked up the Inverstone. So, and that was cool too, because it was at the Scottish Highland Games
Mm-hmm.
Museum at I'll butcher, I won't say it how the Scottish people actually say it, but at the Bremer
Braver,
Games.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was amazing, and having all the Highlands in the background, and it was just the place was so cool. And knowing the history of both of them, like how many different strength athletes over the years have had their hands on those things, and to know that you're getting to lift something that has tested so many other people over so many years. It was cool. It was really
Yeah,
cool.
very neat. So, yeah, so this is how I ended up reaching out to you was for the invert, but it's ended up being so much more than that. Let's talk about your work with Rogue Invitational and the Arnold and kind of some of the highlights there. And we will roll back a little bit to talking about the Dinnies when they were introduced or the replicas. And I believe that year Chloe Brennan lifted them. But
Hmm.
my favorite was watching Ferris walk with them.
Yeah.
That was incredible. Did you see that?
Yeah, I did. I wasn't there. I saw it on the live feed, but yeah, that
Mhm.
was amazing. Yeah, that
Yeah.
guy
Like his
that
grip
guy's got hands
strength.
like stone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Incredible. And so for folks that have any of the walking stones in their events, I highly recommend watching Ferris's walking stone at the Rogue Invitational. So how did you get involved? Was it your affiliation with the CrossFit that brought you to Rogue, or how did that
Yeah.
relationship happen?
Yeah. Drake, the guy that I mentioned, knew that strongman stuff was that I had always enjoyed doing that, and they needed some help with that event at the Invitational. So he's like, "Hey, would you be interested in helping out?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely." And that was 5 years ago. It was when they were still in Austin.
Okay.
And so the first year I showed up, I just kind of helped wherever they needed me to do anything. I was just, kid in a candy store, and whatever they needed, I just helped out with it. And then got asked back the second year, and then was asked to help out in take more of a role in it when we got to Scotland. And so I've had that same role where now they've asked me to, like I run the briefs and help handle the appeals, and just make sure the thing runs well. So yeah.
And so let's talk about some of the the natural stones that have appeared in some of these events. What's kind of your favorite strength feat that you've seen at the Rogue, specifically with stones?
At the Rogue with stones, I would say my favorite stone event had to have been last year, the Mons Mag. Uh,
Yes.
I mean, they were Atlas stones. They weren't, they weren't natural stones, but just the spectacle and the work that went into creating the the cannons, but then seeing Steve Slater with the stones, like it was almost like each of the stones was one of his kids too.
Hmm.
He takes so much care in making sure that those things that they all weigh the same, that they all feel the same, that they're all like as identical as they can possibly be. And, they showed up and they took them off of the truck, and Steve was right over there and looking at them and making sure that nothing had gotten chipped, and, everything was okay. In the transportation. And it was, so that, I think that event was probably my favorite so far for stones.
Yeah, and then we were just talking about the Arnolds happening this weekend and the stone events there. I didn't actually see any of the men lift. Did you watch any of the feed coming out from that
Yeah, I
event?
did. I love that tombstone to shoulder that they do at the Arnold. That's because that's a natural stone, and they
Hmm.
they always talk about how hard it is to get it to the shoulder, because it's not, the weight of it is goofy because it's heavier in some spots than it is in others. And that's the other thing that I always enjoyed about the natural stones was, um just, you don't know, you've got to figure out how to pick it up. It's not just, are you strong enough, it's, are you strong enough, and can you put it in the proper position to where it's not just going to flip away from you every time you try to pick it up.
Do you know the
I don't
history of that stone at all, or the
I
background to that?
I believe it's Ode Hogan's stone.
Oh, okay.
And he thought that it was a good stone and hard to lift. And as far as I know, there are some like replicas of it floating around. Um, but that was the other thing that was cool about it, is nobody has access to that
Hmm.
exact stone, so you can't train specifically to get better at that stone. You just have to get better at lifting stones, and so I like that. I like that also. That's
And oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say I don't know if you saw this in your when you were, doing your research before we met, but, there's a CrossFit did these Meet the Trainer videos, several years ago, and there was a Meet Kurtis Bowler one, and a friend of mine came up to do the video, and we actually went out to try and find a natural stone to lift that day, and we found one, and, like we've said, they're usually heavier than you think they're going to be. Well, I could not get it in the back of my pickup to save my life. Like, I bet we were there long enough that I started feeling bad for the camera guy, because it was like it had been an hour, and I think he was like, "Dude, it's not going to happen today. Can we just go home? It's cold out here." And that year, on December 31st, I remember because it came up in my memories, this year, December 31st, we went back out. We were getting no, it couldn't have been December 31st. Maybe it was November, because we were getting a Christmas tree, and we came down from playing in the snow, and we were driving by that spot, and my wife saw my blinker come on. We were in two different cars. She saw my blinker come on, and she called me and she's like, "Are you going to try and pick up that stupid stone again?" And I was like, "Yes, I am." She's like, "Okay." And it was getting dark out, and I pulled up, and it took me about 10 minutes, but I finally found the way to grab it, and I got it loaded into the back of my pickup. And so they put that at the very end of the video. They showed us going back to it and getting it, and it's sitting out in our driveway right now.
That's
But
how much
it's
is that?
I don't know. I've never weighed it, but I'm guessing it's a little over 300 pounds. So,
Wow.
but
Uh,
yeah.
So you've mentioned for Atlas stones not using tacky, and that actually was very popular in when I was in CrossFit, not using tacky on the Atlas stones, just simply using chalk. But for your aside from building a fence, which I'm not sure many of us will have the capacity to do that, but what would some of your tips be for you seem to have like old school, like Milo, all the old school influences. What would some of your tips be? And I see some photos in the background of
Yeah. Yep.
some yeah.
The grip strength was always a big thing with me. It was something that uh, growing up, like my dad would, again, he was a logger, and having a strong grip is a big thing for a logger. And so he would always do little challenges with us. And like, we'd see when we were splitting firewood, we'd see, who could grab the biggest piece of firewood by the end and, flip it over to the stack. When we were had the splitting maul out, we would hold the maul out in front of us in our hand and then lever it back towards us and see if we could tap ourselves in the forehead
Yeah.
with the end of it and then come back up. Um, and so when I first saw the grippers, the Captains of Crush grippers, I was like, I've always been halfway decent at those. And I almost closed the number 3 the first time I ever tried to close it.
Wow.
Um, and so I've always had a decent grip, and I think that helps out a lot with stones, especially without tacky. And I know why, after having been with the Invitational the last few years and um, listening to some of the guys talk, like I understand why they use tacky because it helps with bicep tendon tears and
Yes.
things
Yeah.
like that. So I understand why they use it, especially with the giant stones that those guys are lifting. It's just never been something that I wanted to do, and so I found that the stronger I was, doing this with my hand, I could get this locked into position, and then I didn't need the tacky because this was strong enough that the stone wasn't going to go anywhere, and then I could pick it up. So I think the grip strength really helped out with that, and I think that's the another thing that really transitioned the over to CrossFit as well was having a strong grip helps with pull-ups, muscle-ups, deadlifts,
Rope
high
climbs.
rep
Yeah.
cleans, high rep snatches,
Yeah.
clean and jerks, all of those things. So I think um, that helped me out a lot when I first got into CrossFit too.
Yeah, and I was just pulling this out because this has been one of like the best investments I've made for my wrist strength is as you say like working on now it's got a really light weight on it right now, but working on the various controlled movements of
Mhm.
for that wrist because I'm starting to get arthritis and this is definitely helping um, build up those muscles around my wrists so that when I get to my heavier stones,
Yeah.
uh, I can still lift them. But
Yeah. The
yeah,
other
grip.
thing that I
Mhm.
found really beneficial is we do a lot of this in strength stuff and in CrossFit, but we do very little of this. And
Yes,
so I found like the rubber bands for the end of your fingers or the Iron Mind also sold those I forget what they called the loops. They're like eagle loops or something like that that you put your finger in and open up and try and pick weights up that way.
like, are you talking these?
Those, but there's also um sorry, garage tour time again.
No, I
Uh
really like this experience.
these.
Oh, I've never seen that before.
Yeah, you put your so there's a one for your thumb
Okay.
and then oh this is the wrong hand. So there are 4 left and right hand, but there's one for your thumb, one for your pinky, and then one for your other 3 fingers. And then you can put a carabiner in here with a loading pin, and you can then you now instead of squeezing in this way, you're pushing out into the loops and trying to pick weight up that way.
Oh,
And
that's cool.
you can pick up like max weight. You can hold lighter weights and just see how long you can hold it up to build some endurance. But these are great for working the opposite of what we usually work with grip stuff.
And for those folks that usually get tennis elbow, it is because of only doing pinching
Yeah,
instead of
usually. Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
Okay, this is super cool. So talk to us about the photos in the background, because one of my favorite people is sitting right over your your shoulder.
Yeah. So we've got Derek Poundstone up
Yeah,
top
with the sear stone there.
on his Searstone lift. And I just thought that was such an amazing lift, because if you've ever read the article in Milo about it, like the guy that made that contest picked that stone because he thought nobody would be able to pick it up.
Yes.
And so
And it ended up being heavier than it
Poundstone pick
was supposed to be.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was always super cool. And then I've got Shannon Hartnett also.
Mm-hmm.
She did some World's Strongest Woman stuff, but she was mostly Highland Games athlete. And I had her because one of the coolest things I think about CrossFit is that men and women are equally celebrated in it. And
Yes.
I wanted, like, I had a ton of pictures of, I had Poundstone. I've got Magnus Samuelson picking up an Atlas stone. I've got Sven Carlson carrying the Husafell.
Husafell.
And then I've got, I can't remember this dude's name, but Chinese weightlifter who's just jacked.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had all of these pictures up, and I wanted one of a strong woman too. And so I saw that they had the one of Shannon, and I was like, I'm going to get that. And we had a gal at our gym that was built a bit like her, and, was always told, like, you're too muscly and you're too this and you're too that. And so I was like, hey, you can't listen to those people. Look at this lady. She's amazing and doing awesome stuff. And so I always wanted to have those pictures around too. So
Yeah, no, I I love that. I saw that when we first started chatting earlier.
yeah.
So you've mentioned all those stones. Are there any stones that are on your list that you want to lift yet?
I would love to um, lift the testing stone of the Fianna.
Yes. Yeah.
And I don't know where in Scotland it is. I don't know if it's close to Aberdeen or not. I haven't done as much research on that one as I have some of the other ones. But that one, just to have the Inver stone, a lot of people have tested themselves on that. The Dinnie
Hmm.
stones, a lot of people have tested themselves on that. But the testing stone of the Fianna was like, that was in order to become a warrior for that tribe, you had to be able to pick up that stone. And that type of history is just super cool to me. And so I'd
Yeah.
love to be able to pick that one up. I don't know if it's going to be in the cards this year or not. I've got some um, health things that I'm going to need to get a hip replacement, and I don't know if it's going to happen before or after. If it happens after, it might happen this year. If it happens before, it probably won't, and it'll be something that um, stays on the list. But yeah,
No, it is a must to go. The Glen is gorgeous. And I mean, in Canada, like everyone thinks that the stones are really far apart from each other, but for us in Canada, we drive, 30 minutes to get groceries. So it's
yeah,
like nothing. If you went down from Aberdeen to the Inver, you may as well just jet back into the center for the Fianna. But yeah,
okay,
it's beautiful. And uh, it has the first time I went over, I got a sliver of air underneath. The second time I went, I didn't train as much because I was preparing more for our national championships for Highland Games. So I had a different focus. I did not get any air under it. That was very disappointing. But hopefully, when I'm back this year, maybe in September that'll be something that'll happen. So we'll
Yeah.
see. But
Yeah.
anything like an no draw to the Husafell or anything like that?
Um, I'd love to give the Husafell a shot. I
Yeah.
just don't know, especially with my hips the way they are. I don't know if carrying weighted carries have been
Yeah,
one of the
not
things that have really bother it. And so I just don't know if that's going to be in the cards. Maybe after I get my new hips, that might be something that I can start doing again. But we'll have to see how heavy duty they are before I
yeah.
try throwing too much stuff at them.
And so you're 54 now, or turning 54.
Hmm.
Um, how has your training changed then from when you first started your CrossFit in 2004?
Um, I think just before, I think just in the past probably 3 or 4 years, I have started to listen to the voice that says, "Hey, I wouldn't do that right now."
Hmm.
And I think that's probably the biggest thing. Like I used to just be like, whatever, we'll see what happens, drive it till it develops. And I think now I'm a lot more likely to, if something's not feeling right, just not do that thing that day and find something else to do.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that's probably been the biggest change. And then maybe a couple more rest days here and
Yeah.
there. Just not recovering as quickly as I used to. I never warmed up. I I I would very rarely do any sort of warm up stuff. I mean, if it was a heavy day, I would obviously lift a little bit lighter weights up
Yeah.
to that. I didn't do a extravagant stretching, foam rolling, whatever beforehand. I would usually just jump right into the workouts. And it was part of that was because I was a police officer when I first started, and I was like,
Hmm.
I'm not going to get a chance to warm up before I have to chase somebody down, so I need to train that way. Um, but then even after I stopped, it wasn't ever a habit. And I think, uh, if I could go back and change one thing, it would probably be that spending more time on the warming up and more time on the stretching on the backside of it. Cause I think that's probably what the majority of the things that are wrong with me now stem from, is not spending time taking care of myself when I should have, when I still had a body that needed taken care of. So
Yeah, I definitely am in that camp with the no warming up. I do try to do that now, obviously. But every generation of my family has been in for hip replacements. So I really hope it skips me, but
yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. It's not looking too positive. So I am, as I'm in my 50s now, I'm definitely trying to warm up more gently and then listen to my body. I had a rough go at work yesterday and I could just tell the lifts they weren't going to come because
Yeah.
everything impacts, like it's mind, body, spirit, that kind of thing. Like everything impacts the lift. So
Yeah.
listening to more
That's
of that.
I've heard, a friend of mine said that and I don't think he came up with it, I think he heard it from somebody else, but that, all the stressors in your life are like filling up a bathtub and just adding another faucet. And he's like, work is a faucet, your workouts are a faucet, your family is a faucet, and, the only way to get some of that water to slow down going into the bathtub before your stress tub gets full is you've got to shut off some of the faucets or turn the
Hmm.
pressure down on them. And always thought that was a really cool analogy of ways to, like, I need to turn the faucet down here for a second because this is getting to be too much. So
Yeah. Well, you mentioned family, and you shared with us at the beginning about your son with autism. And one of my greatest, I think, legacies as a mom is going to be that I was the first woman in my line to pick up a barbell. And
mm,
I now have my children doing that and picking stones.
mm,
And you have an interesting, dynamic within your family that you have a son with autism. And so, how has strength kind of informed that growth with him? Has that helped with did he get into CrossFit? I mean, that community is very like welcoming, very open.
Yeah. And I think, in all honesty, I think it was the community aspect of CrossFit that got me into it a lot more than the working out part. I enjoyed the
Hmm.
workout, but the just seeing some of the old pictures of the original Santa Cruz gym, seeing, these all of these people with their CrossFit Forging Elite Fitness t-shirts, and they're watching like some kid's soccer game, or they're watching a volleyball game, or it's just, I was like, that's cool. Like they support each other. Everybody is the same. Like if you're willing to do the workouts, like nobody cares how good you do at them. Nobody cares how bad you do. Like people just care that you show up and try. And and so I think that was what drew me to it more than the fitness stuff. And then having Casey, that made it even more so. And it made it this place where like we could always take him, and
Hmm.
he always fit in, and he was always comfortable in CrossFit gyms too. That's went away a little bit in the last few years. We've had some pretty pretty big behavior challenges pop up with him over the last couple of years, especially since COVID. That was really rough for
Hmm.
him and a lot of other special needs folks to have everything be disrupted so much because of that. That he still really hasn't recovered from it. But the gym was always a place where he could go and do whatever. And then we could go to any CrossFit gym. And because they're all different, but they've all got pull-up bars, they've all got barbells, they've all got bumper plates, they've all got people in them, and they're working hard and doing their thing. And so it was always a place where he just fit in and would feel at home. And so it was great. And I mean, he's still, he doesn't work out with us as much as he used to because we don't have people coming into the garage anymore.
Hmm.
But when we first moved into the garage, he would work out sometimes 2 or 3 times a day. He would we've got a bunch of trails around our house, and he'd run the trails with people. He'd do lifts with people. He sat down on a rower and rode a 5K one night with a guy. Um, and he loved it. And he taught himself how to do everything. I mean, we'd go into Home Depot, and he'd grab a chunk of PVC pipe off of the rack in Home Depot and do just a beautiful split jerk with it right in the middle of the aisle of Home Depot. And we never taught him how to do that. He just learned how to do it by watching all of the other people around him at the CrossFit gyms.
Well, I know that some of the folks that I have younger ones with kind of developmental needs and some with autism. Like, what would your and they're much younger. They're much younger in this journey than you are presently. But like, what would your recommendation to them be? And they're in the strength community. What would your recommendation be for them?
Just know, I guess, that it's always going to be an uphill battle, but it's always going to be worth fighting too. And it's not going to, I guess the other thing I would say is to know, start preparing for adulthood before you think you need to start preparing for adulthood. Because when your child becomes an adult and is no longer in the school district, the the amount of, at least here in the States, the amount of help that is out there for you is drastically reduced.
Yeah.
And I think it's it's very, I don't mean this to sound bad, but like it's cool to put on your Instagram, hey, I'm a special needs helper, and look at this cute little kid that I'm getting to help out. But then when you've got a 6'2", 250-pound man that can give you a concussion just
Yeah.
because he doesn't want to, he wants to hold the door open and you don't want him to hold the door open, there's not people standing in line to do that.
Yeah.
And so the amount of people that are out there that are willing to help drastically reduce as your child gets older. And so the sooner you can start preparing for that and trying to find somebody that does want to help out, I think the better off you will be. And then really rely on your friends and family. Like they are the ones that are always going to be there to help you, and they're the ones that um I'm really, I don't know if it's fortunate or if it's just like the type of person that I am, but I don't mind talking about it, and I'll tell really anybody that'll listen the challenges that we have with Casey. And I think it helps me, like, just being able to talk about it takes some of the weight off my shoulders. Like, it turns using the faucet analogy, like, it allows me to turn the faucet down just a little bit.
Hmm.
Where my wife's a little bit different. She doesn't talk about it as much. It's just not her characteristic or her personality. Whereas that's how I do it. And so I think the more you can talk about it, it's helped me anyway. I feel like it allows me to not necessarily, like, I don't want to feel like I'm putting it on anybody else, but I feel like if somebody else knows about it, it's less of a burden for me that I have to carry. Like, if I can tell 30 people about it, now I get to split that burden up between 30 people, and it makes it a lot easier for each person to hold on to.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so I'm not holding all of it, and then one other person doesn't have to, like, I don't have to, it's not my wife and I holding 50%. It's maybe we've each got 10%, and then, friends are all holding 5% for us, and it makes it just a little bit easier for us to bear all by ourselves. So,
Yeah, and I think that in the strength world, we've seen many times where the strength community has kind of coalesced around people that have, faced challenges, and I think I think sharing the load, or sharing the the drips from the faucet is definitely something that I've gained from, my experience, not only in the stone world, but strongman, through CrossFit, all of that.
yeah.
Um, so as we're talking about things, so thank you so much for sharing that experience. I really appreciate that for the guests that are going through that, or from the listeners that are going through that themselves. But through all of this journey, then, I think your experience with the Rogue Invitational obviously is super. Like, I had no idea, like, when I asked you to do this, like, I had no idea about your background. I was just really, I thought your Inver lift was super cool. And then it ended up being a really cool thing
Yeah.
to have you talking here today, or speaking with me. But I kind of want to talk about, in the final moments of the episode, is, do you think events like the Arnold Rogue Invitational have revived an interest in stone lifting and traditional strength challenges? Like, I've been trying to write a thesis on this, and I just wonder what your views and thoughts are on that.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think the I think the more people that you can expose to it, the higher likelihood there is that somebody's going to get bit by the bug, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm sure both of us, the reason that we got it wasn't because we just happened upon it. We saw somebody else doing it. We saw, for me, it was watching the World's Strongest Man reruns on TV on Christmas
Hmm.
Day and New Year's Day. I'd sit down and watch that stuff and was like, man, I want to do that. And part of it was growing up the way I did too. It was, strength and that's type of strength and work ethic were just kind of a thing in our community. But so yeah, the more people that can get exposed to it, and the more, that all the CrossFit Games people now are, the ones that are at the invitational are getting exposed to the strong men and strong women. The strong men and strong women are getting exposed to the CrossFit athletes
Hmm.
and finding out that, that was one of the things we did. this is going to be another tangent. Sorry, but
No, I love it. Because my mind is spinning here already.
we had we went to when so Louis Simmons for a while was our subject matter expert for powerlifting and CrossFit, and I got asked when we did the first dry run out at Westside Barbell. I had told Dave, like, hey, if we do some sort of something out at Westside, like, I would love to be one of the people that gets to go out there.
Yeah.
And a couple of weeks later, Dave called and he said, hey, we're going out to Westside. If you still want to go, like, these are the dates. And I was like, yep, I will be there for sure. And so we went out to Westside Barbell and got to play around with their guys and gals for a couple of days, and they got to play around with us for a couple of days. And it was pretty unanimous from the West Side guys was like, holy smokes, we didn't realize that you guys were as strong as you were. And then from all of us, it was like, holy smokes, we didn't realize that you guys could jump as well as you could, or get on the sled and drag the sled for this much time, or work the battle ropes for this amount of time. And so I think we both came away from that with a greater respect for the other ones. And not that I needed a lot of extra respect for the West Side guys, because that place was just, it was like, it was showing up there and being there was a lot like showing up at Bremer with the Inver Stone this year. It was just like, this is the place, like, that's the monolith that Chuck Vogelpol was doing his ridiculous squats on. Like, there was underneath the monolith, there was a spot that was, I have to get my monitor further away from me. Like, there was a spot that was probably this wide and this tall that was dried blood underneath the monolith from all of the nosebleeds over the years. And I was just like, the amount of like crazy people's blood that's on the floor right here where I'm lifting right now, like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And so I think that Rogue is doing a lot of that same thing with the Invitational by having both of those athletes together. Everybody's gaining more respect for what the other group of people is doing, and then they're going to tell other people about it, and then those people are going to look at the other thing, and there'll be strength athletes that start looking a little bit more at CrossFit. There'll be CrossFitters that are looking a little bit more at the strength stuff, and that whole rising tide raises all ships thing. I think it's just a good exposure for everything.
No, I think that sums up nicely, what the table is about for me, because you have your purists in natural stone lifting who, it's not competitive. It's you and the stone, and which I very much believe in myself. Like, it's you and the stone. It's not about posting. It's not about world records. It's not about that kind of thing. But I also do competitive stone lifting. Right. And I think, everybody belongs at this table. The strong women, the strong men, the purists, the everywhere in between, and we can learn something from each other. And so I think that's that was a great a great segue to that plug. But we have covered a lot of ground, and I have to say, I'm kind of disappointed that your son didn't show up for a visit.
He's been out in the garage for a couple of times. He just hasn't made his way over to the computer.
I am disappointed. But as we wrap up here, I wanted to ask you kind of one question about what do you think is the most historic kind of lift? And it can be stone or it can be otherwise. Obviously, stone would be great because it's a stone podcast, but that kind of you've ever witnessed, either personally or like through video, through.
The most historic thing that I've ever witnessed. I think probably the most impressive video that I've ever watched is it's not stone lifting. It's Kurt Karwoski doing his 1,000-pound squat for 2 reps.
Yeah. Yeah.
That just the ease with which he did that was pretty amazing to me. As far as what I've ever witnessed,
Like,
I
and it
would
can
have,
be a video. Like, you don't have to be there in
yeah,
person. Yeah.
I think a thing that I've witnessed in person was the Rogue Invitational. I believe it was the second year I was there. They did the yoke carry into a log clean and press,
Hmm.
and Mitchell Hooper did
Mitchell
that
Hoover. Yeah.
so fast. Like
Hmm.
he practically
His,
sprinted with the
yeah.
yoke, and then he did like 3 touch and go clean and jerks, and
Yeah.
it wasn't even it was almost like a Viper press.
Hmm.
That was just super impressive. The way those guys just are so um they're so strong that some of the things that they do, just like you watch it happen and you're like, did they really just do the thing that I thought they did? Like, they were getting fitted for the yoke one of the first years that I was there, and these dudes had just like got off the airplane and drove out to Austin to the Del Diamond, and they're in flip flops and they're picking up this 1,000-pound yoke, just like, yeah,
Yeah.
that'll do. And then they just walk off. And I'm like, dude, you're in flip flops right now. Like, you just sat on a plane from Latvia for how long? And now you just walk out here in flip flops and pick up 1,000 pounds without any sort of warm up. Like, it was crazy. So,
Yeah. And I think that points to something that I've come to realize in kind of my old age too, and kind of researching Derek Poundstone and what he did for his training. But it's the being able to be both strong and flexible and have that, cardio capacity, which is very much like CrossFit like. But
yeah.
reading about or listening to Derek Poundstone talk about his training during the day, he was at the edge of something that nobody else was doing at the time. And in order to prepare for his truck pulls or sled put, I can't remember which one, but he'd get on a treadmill without it on, and he would just go
Uh-huh.
and like
Yeah.
push his heart rate up to like 100 and I don't know 80 or something ridiculous. But he had both of those worlds, right? So
Yeah.
I think this is the segue to the CrossFit piece, like to say both of those are necessary. You can't just be strong. At being a multifaceted athlete is important. Oh, good. Hello. Oh, there we go.
He's eating a breakfast sandwich.
Oh yeah, it's still morning there. It's still
Yeah.
morning there. Yeah. But
Yeah.
thoughts on that?
Agree.
Hmm.
Agree. I think the like having all of those things is super important. And that was one of the things that I noticed when I did start doing CrossFit, that the I was able to apply all of my strength a lot better, because I wasn't, especially doing the job I was doing at the time. Like that, the foot pursuit I got into where my boss told me I sounded like a weightlifter that was trying to run.
Yeah.
If that guy, he was a 16-year-old kid, and if he had decided to fight me after I had to run and it was like a half mile, right? But if he had decided to fight with me after that, I'd have been riding the struggle bus hard with this 16-year-old kid. And it wouldn't have mattered how much my back squat was. It wouldn't have mattered how big a stone I could pick up, because I didn't have any gas left in the tank to do anything with it. And then versus, doing, starting to do the CrossFit stuff, I got in another foot pursuit a couple years after I had been doing CrossFit, and like, chased the guy down and got done and was like, I want to do some pull-ups or deadlift or something now, because like I've got all this energy left still, because I've got the capacity to get me there and then do something once I get there.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. Okay. So
yeah,
you
I
heard
think
it here, folks. You can't just be strong. You have to, you have to do other, you have to round yourself out.
yeah,
And it doesn't mean going for, a 5K. There's ways to be strategic where you can keep your
yeah.
strength gains, but no,
We did
that's,
we did lots of medleys. Like
mhm.
I would do when I was mixing CrossFit stuff with strongman stuff. A lot of what I did was medleys. I would do, uh, 3 rounds of a 200-meter run, 10 log clean and presses, and then, a stone. We had a stone loading platform that was 36 30, 36, 48, and 52 inches tall. And I'd set 4 stones up around it, and I'd do a round. I'd do a load of stones, and then I'd pull the stones off, and I'd do 2 or 3 rounds of that. All of that stuff, especially if you're training for, like, I get the guys and gals that are training for a competition, like, you want to train to be as good at that competition as you
Yeah.
possibly can. But if you're training for real life, like, it's very rare that you're not having to do something before you have to do the thing that you're doing, or you have to, try and get to where you're going to before you have to do the thing.
To
And
do it.
so, I think combining them is great. I mean, I've been doing it for a lot of years now.
Okay, we have went the gamut, and usually at the end of the episode, I always ask the guests the same question, and it's asking for advice. 3 pieces of advice that you would give folks. I mean, you've given us a lot of teachables and advice so far, but it can be life, stone, what have you, that you think would land well with the folks listening.
I'd say just, oh boy, this is a tough one. Let's go, find a partner.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think, the, like, having a strong woman that I can rely upon to, like, tell me if I'm being an idiot, if I'm not being an idiot, stop being an idiot, like, all of those things. Like, I think that the the relationship that we have has been a huge part of everything that I've been able to do in life. Like, so having a partner that you can respect and get along with, and it's probably not going to be like it is in the movies, where, you're all, like, googly eyed every time you walk into the room with each other, and you're madly in love. And it's not that. It's a relationship and a partnership. And so
Mm-hmm.
finding somebody that you can be that with, I think, is, I don't know if that's advice or not,
It lands
or
so well
a
with me. Absolutely. Like,
or a
and
unicorn. But, find your unicorn.
yeah,
I think that's a big help. Try to don't take yourself too seriously. And then the third would be to talk to people. Like, to don't don't bottle up your emotions, and don't feel like, if your friends are really your friends, you can complain to them about your life, and you can complain to them about the things that are rough. You can share your ups and downs with them, and they're not going to think any more or less of you because you're sharing those things with them. And so talking to people, I think, is, especially now with just everything going on with
oh,
everything. It's like
yeah.
everybody you're in this camp or that camp. And if you're in that camp, then F you. And if you're in the other camp, then F you. And it's like, where if we could just talk, I think everybody would find that they were a lot more similar than they were different. And, everybody would probably feel a little bit better about themselves and have less stress in their lives and everything else. So, yeah, talk to people, don't take yourself too seriously, and find your unicorn. Those are my 3.
Perfect advice to end the episode on. Well, Kurtis, it has been an absolutely amazing conversation with you. We've went through natural stones, CrossFit, grip. We didn't even get into your chainsaw adventures. We've talked about autism and life and finding your partner. And I can't relate more. I mean, that's why I get to do what I get to do, both in, running competitions, and in this podcast, is having a partner that supports that.
Yeah.
But I just want to thank you for taking the time today. And I do hope that you get to lift Fiona when you're over, I would say definitely get that Uber, get the trip in, even just to go to the Glen. It's absolutely beautiful. And I'll be watching your feed to see, hopefully that happen.
Yeah.
But
All right.
to all those listening, please don't forget to like and subscribe. And if folks wanted to follow you, you have a private account?
No, just my
No,
at Kurtis Bowler is that's my
Curtis Bowler.
Instagram thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Curtis. Have a great afternoon and enjoy or morning.
Yeah.
Enjoy the rest of your morning.
All right. Thanks a lot. I hope you
Okay.
have a great day, and thank you very much for asking me to be on. It's been a lot of fun talking to you. I
Awesome.
could talk stones and strength and stuff all day long. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Yeah. Bye bye.
Bye.